The sound of her steady breathing beside him in the darkness made Marcus's heart race. How had he ended up here, sharing a bed with Victoria Hayes, the iron-fisted CEO who had made his professional life a living hell for the past 2 years? As the blizzard howled outside their cabin window, he stared at the ceiling, remembering his daughter's words that morning, "Dad, sometimes the universe puts people together for a reason." If only Emma could see him now, trapped in this impossible situation with the last person he'd ever expected to understand his struggles as a single father. Hey everyone. If you're enjoying this story so far, please hit that like button and subscribe to the channel for more emotional stories that will tug at your heartstrings. Your support means everything, and I promise this journey of unexpected connection is one you won't want to miss. Marcus Parker had always been defined by 2 things, his unwavering love for his daughter and his relentless work ethic. At 34, he'd mastered the delicate balancing act of being both mother and father to his 8-year-old daughter Emma while climbing the corporate ladder at Hayes Innovations. The company had been his salvation after his wife Melissa's death 3 years ago, providing the stability and income he desperately needed to create a new normal for himself and Emma. Every morning, he would wake before dawn, the ghost of Melissa's absence still palpable in the quiet house. He'd prepare Emma's lunch with the same care his wife once had, writing little notes with hearts and jokes that he tucked between her sandwich and apple slices. He'd lay out her clothes, check her homework one last time, and then gently wake her with a kiss on her forehead and their special morning greeting, "Rise and shine, my brave girl." These quiet moments were sacred to him, the sleepy smile Emma would give him, so like her mother's that sometimes it physically hurt to see it. The way she'd wrap her small arms around his neck and whisper, "Morning, Daddy," before launching into stories about her dreams or questions about the day ahead. In these moments, Marcus felt both the crushing weight of single parenthood and the indescribable joy of being Emma's world. Victoria Hayes had inherited the tech company from her father 2 years ago, sweeping in like a winter storm. At 36, she had transformed the once familial workplace culture into a ruthlessly efficient machine. The employees nicknamed her the Ice Queen behind her back, not that anyone would dare say it to her face. Her reputation for perfectionism and emotional detachment preceded her everywhere she went. She wore power like a second skin, tailored suits in steel grays and midnight blues, heels that added unnecessary inches to her already impressive height, and a perpetual expression of cool assessment that made even senior executives nervous. In meetings, she had a habit of tapping one manicured finger against her tablet while others spoke, as if counting the seconds until they finished wasting her time. The company's profits had soared under her leadership, but so had employee turnover. For Marcus, Victoria represented everything he resented about corporate America. Her constant demands for late hours and weekend work seemed deliberately designed to punish those with families. The single parents on staff had dwindled to just him, and he suspected it was only a matter of time before he too would be forced to choose between his job and his daughter. Their interactions had always been strictly professional and increasingly tense. Victoria seemed to have a sixth sense for calling meetings just as Marcus was preparing to leave for the day, or requesting complex reports due Monday morning that necessitated weekend work. He had begun to wonder if she had specifically targeted him, though he couldn't imagine why. His work was impeccable, his manner always respectful if not warm. "Parker, I need you in Aspen for the Nordstrom pitch," Victoria had announced on Monday morning, dropping a folder on his desk without even looking up from her phone. "We leave Thursday morning. Back Friday night." Marcus felt his stomach drop. "This Thursday?" "But Ms. Hayes, I can't possibly." "Can't isn't a word we use at Hayes Innovations," she cut him off, finally meeting his eyes with that steel blue gaze that brooked no argument. "This account could double our Q1 projections. I need my best numbers person there." The compliment, if it was one, caught him off guard. Victoria Hayes didn't offer praise casually, or really at all. But the timing couldn't have been war. "I understand the importance," Marcus said, trying to keep his voice level. "But my daughter has her winter concert Thursday evening. I'm the only family she has, and I promised her I'd be there." Something flickered across Victoria's face, so briefly he almost missed it. Was it annoyance? Disappointment? Whatever it was, it vanished behind her professional mask. The company jet leaves at 7 a.m. sharp. We'll be back by Friday evening. She turned to leave, then paused. And Parker? Bring your A-game. Nordstrom doesn't suffer fools. Marcus watched her walk away, her designer heels clicking purposefully across the hardwood floors. How could he explain to Emma that he would miss her solo? The thought of her small face crumpling with disappointment made his chest ache that he spent the rest of the day in a fog of resentment and resignation, mechanically completing his tasks while mentally rehearsing how to break the news to Emma. By the time he picked her up from after-school care, he still hadn't found the right words. Emma bounded into the car with her usual enthusiasm, her curly hair escaping from its ponytail, her backpack clutched to her chest. Dad! Guess what? Ms. Winters said I have the best voice in the whole class and I get to sing the first verse of Winter Wonderland all by myself. Her excitement was palpable, her eyes shining with pride. Marcus forced a smile, reaching over to tuck a stray curl behind her ear. That's amazing, princess. I always knew you were a star. You're still coming, right? You promised you'd sit in the front row so I could see you. Marcus gripped the steering wheel tighter. Let's talk about that when we get home, okay? How about pizza for dinner? The distraction worked temporarily, but as they sat at their kitchen table with half-eaten slices between them, Marcus knew he couldn't delay any longer. Emma, sweetheart, I need to tell you something about Thursday. She looked up, pizza halfway to her mouth, and something in his expression must have given him away because her smile faded immediately. You're not coming to my concert, are you? The directness of her question, the immediate understanding in her eyes, broke his heart. She was too young to be so accustomed to disappointment. I have to go on a business trip with my boss, he explained, reaching for her hand across the table. It's really important, and I tried to get out of it, but, it's okay, Dad. Emma's voice was small but steady. I know your job is important. Not as important as you, Marcus insisted, moving to kneel beside her chair. Never as important as you. I'll have Mrs. Rodriguez record every second, and we'll watch it together as soon as I get back. Emma nodded, but the light had gone out of her eyes. Will you at least try to make it back in time? I promise I'll do everything I can, he said, knowing even as he spoke that it was a promise he probably couldn't keep. That evening, as he tucked Emma into bed, he struggled to find the right words to comfort her. Princess, I'm so sorry about the concert, he began, smoothing her wild curls away from her forehead, curls so like her mother's that sometimes it took his breath away. Emma looked up at him with those knowing eyes that always seemed too wise for her 8 years. It's okay, Daddy. I know your job is important. The resignation in her voice cut deeper than anger would have. Just for one night, sweetheart. I have to go to Aspen with my boss for an important meeting. But I'll be thinking of you the whole time. But my concert. Her lower lip trembled slightly. I know, Em. I'm so sorry. I'll have Mrs. Rodriguez record every second, and we'll watch it together as soon as I get back. I promise. Emma was quiet for a long moment, studying the glow-in-the-dark stars on her ceiling. Is your boss the lady in the picture from the company party? The pretty one who never smiles? Marcus couldn't help but chuckle. That's her. Ms. Hayes. She looks sad, Emma said simply. Sad? No, honey. She's just serious. Very focused on work. Emma shrugged, the wisdom of childhood allowing her to see what adults often missed. Maybe she doesn't have anyone to go to concerts for. Her words stayed with Marcus as he packed Wednesday night, haunting him as he kissed Emma goodbye early Thursday morning while she still slept, her small hand reflexively gripping his as he whispered his love. Mrs. Rodriguez, their elderly neighbor who had become a surrogate grandmother to Emma after Melissa's death, patted his arm reassuringly. Don't worry, Marcus. I'll take good care of her. And I'll record every moment of that concert. Thank you, he said, his throat tight. I've left the number of the hotel and my cell will be on all day. If she needs anything, go, Mrs. Rodriguez said gently. Before you wake her. It's harder if you have to see her cry. The drive to the private airfield was silent, Marcus rehearsing what he would say to Victoria. Part of him wanted to confront her, to demand why this meeting couldn't have been scheduled for any other day. But he knew it would be professional suicide. Single parent or not, Hayes Innovations had been good to him, and jobs with their level of salary and benefits didn't grow on trees. Victoria was already aboard the sleek company jet when he arrived, dressed in a charcoal suit that probably cost more than his monthly mortgage payment. She barely looked up from her tablet as he stowed his overnight bag. "Coffee's fresh," she said by way of greeting. "We'll use the flight to finalize our presentation strategy." The flight to Aspen was silent and tense. Victoria buried herself in preparation materials, barely acknowledging Marcus except to quiz him on figures or challenge his projections. He answered mechanically, his mind still in Emma's bedroom, imagining her waking up to find him gone. "Parker, are you with me?" Victoria's sharp voice cut through his thoughts. "I asked about the 5-year growth projection for the Western market." "Sorry, Ms. Hayes." He quickly pulled up the relevant spreadsheet. Western market is projected at 12.3% annual growth, assuming the Nordstrom partnership goes through and we can leverage their retail presence. She studied him for a moment, her expression unreadable. "You seem distracted." "I apologize. It won't affect my performance." "See that it doesn't." She returned to her tablet, but not before adding, "This deal is too important for personal distractions." Marcus bit back the retort that rose to his lips. His personal distraction had a name, a face, and a solo in the winter concert that he would miss because Victoria Hayes couldn't reschedule a meeting. Instead, he focused on the spreadsheets before him, channeling his frustration into meticulous preparation. The Nordstrom executives met them at a luxury resort nestled in the mountains. The meeting went surprisingly well, with Victoria displaying a charm Marcus hadn't known she possessed. He found himself watching her with new eyes as she deftly navigated the conversation, noting how she subtly highlighted his work at precisely the right moments. "Your projections were flawless," she said quietly as they left the conference room, the deal all but secured. "We make a good team, Parker." Before he could respond, her phone rang. The resort manager was calling with apologies. A massive snowstorm was moving in faster than predicted. Roads were already closing, and their pilot had been forced to relocate the jet to Denver. "We're stuck here?" Marcus couldn't keep the panic from his voice. "For how long?" "At least until tomorrow," the manager explained. "The good news is we have one cabin still available. Many guests evacuated earlier when the warning came through." Victoria handled the change of plans with characteristic efficiency, securing the cabin and arranging for necessities to be delivered before the worst of the storm hit. Marcus followed her in numb silence, calculating the hours until Emma's concert, knowing already he would miss it completely. The cabin was rustic but luxurious, a single large room with a stone fireplace, kitchenette, and one king-sized bed. Marcus stood in the doorway, staring at that solitary bed with mounting horror. "I'll take the couch," he said quickly. Victoria raised an eyebrow. "Don't be ridiculous, Parker. That's barely a love seat. We're adults. The bed is plenty big enough for both of us to maintain a professional distance." Her matter-of-fact tone made the situation somehow more awkward. Marcus set his bag down, trying to imagine how he would explain this to Emma if she ever found out. Not that she would. Some stories were definitely not for 8-year-old ears. As the afternoon wore on, the storm intensified. Marcus stood at the window, watching the snow obliterate the world outside, feeling as trapped by circumstances as he was by the weather. At precisely 7 p.m., the time Emma's concert would be starting, he felt his phone vibrate with a text from Mrs. Rodriguez. "She's about to go on. Wishes you were here." Something inside Marcus broke. He turned away from Victoria, who was working at the small table, and tried to swallow the lump in his throat. He had never missed a single important moment in Emma's life since her mother died. Not one. "Parker? Is everything all right?" He hadn't heard Victoria approach. When he turned, she was standing closer than she'd ever been outside of a boardroom, close enough that he could smell her expensive perfume and see the tiny flecks of darker blue in her eyes. "Fine," he managed. My daughter's concert is starting now." Victoria was silent for a moment. Then, to his surprise, she sat on the edge of the bed and gestured for him to join her. "Tell me about her." The simple request, delivered without her usual clipped efficiency, caught him off guard. Before he knew it, Marcus was showing Victoria pictures of Emma on his phone, telling stories of her precocious questions and determined spirit. "She looks like you," Victoria observed, studying a photo of Emma on a swing, her face alight with joy. "She has your smile." "Everyone says she looks like her mother," Marcus replied, surprised. Victoria shook her head. "The coloring, maybe. But that's your smile. The real one you never show at work." The observation was so unexpected, so personal, that Marcus found himself at a loss for words. Victoria seemed equally surprised by her own comment, quickly standing and moving back to her work. But something had shifted between them. As the evening progressed and the storm howled outside, the professional wall they had maintained began to crumble. Over the simple meal provided by the resort, Victoria asked more about Emma, about how Marcus managed as a single parent. "It must be difficult," she said, swirling the wine in her glass. "The company demands a lot." "It is," Marcus admitted, deciding honesty was his only option now. "Especially since you took over." He expected her to bristle at the implied criticism, but instead, she looked down at her plate. "My father believed in work-life balance. I know I've moved away from that." "Why?" The question slipped out before he could stop it. Victoria was quiet for so long that Marcus thought she wouldn't answer. When she finally spoke, her voice had lost its boardroom authority. "My father was beloved by his employees. When I took over after his death, the board made it clear they doubted a woman could maintain his success. I felt I had to be twice as demanding, twice as perfect, to prove them wrong." She met his eyes. "I never considered the human cost of that approach." As the night deepened and the wine bottle emptied, Victoria revealed more of herself than Marcus had ever expected to see. She spoke of growing up in the shadow of Hayes' innovations, of her father's expectations, of failed relationships sacrificed on the altar of career ambition. "The truth is, Parker," she said as they finally prepared for bed, "the awkwardness of their situation somehow diminished by the intimacy of their conversation. I envy you. Despite everything, you've built something real with Emma. Something that matters." In the darkness, lying beside his boss with a careful foot of space between them, Marcus found himself sharing the fear that had haunted him since his wife's death. "I'm terrified of failing her," he whispered. "Of not being enough." Victoria's hand found his across the divide, a brief, warm pressure. "From everything you've told me tonight, you're more than enough for her." Marcus woke to pale winter sunlight and the realization that sometime during the night, the careful distance between them had vanished. Victoria was curled against his side, her head resting on his shoulder, one hand splayed across his chest. Her face in sleep was transformed, the sharp lines of concentration softened, the perpetual furrow between her brows smoothed away. He should have moved. Should have carefully extracted himself before she woke. Instead, he found himself studying her. Marcus woke to find Victoria curled against him, her usual sharp edges softened in sleep. When her eyes fluttered open, there was a moment of perfect stillness before reality reasserted itself. "I apologize," she said quickly, sitting up and smoothing her hair. "That was inappropriate." "No need to apologize," Marcus replied softly. "We were just keeping warm." A ghost of a smile touched her lips before she slipped back behind her professional mask. But the mask didn't fit quite as perfectly as before. The storm had passed, leaving a transformed landscape of pristine white. Their pilot called to confirm he could retrieve them by noon. As they packed in silence, Marcus wondered if everything would revert to normal once they returned to the city, if the connection they'd found would be buried under spreadsheets and corporate hierarchy. On the flight home, Victoria worked quietly beside him, but something had changed. Occasionally, their eyes would meet, and he would catch a glimpse of the woman from the cabin before she looked away. As they prepared to land, she finally broke the silence. "Parker, Marcus, I've been thinking about what you said about Emma's concert." He nodded, the disappointment still fresh. "I'd like to make it up to her. To both of you." Victoria hesitated, uncharacteristically uncertain. "Hayes Innovations is sponsoring the Children's Symphony next weekend. I have box seats. Perhaps you and Emma would join me?" The invitation hung between them, representing far more than a simple outing. "I think she'd like that," Marcus said. "I think we both would." When they parted at the airport, Victoria surprised him by touching his arm lightly. "Thank you," she said simply, "for sharing your story with me. For making me see what I've been missing." Marcus arrived home to find Emma waiting, her face lighting up as he walked through the door. He scooped her into his arms, breathing in the scent of her shampoo, feeling the solid reality of her small body against his chest. "I missed you so much, Daddy. Did you get stuck in the snow? Mrs. Rodriguez showed me on the weather map." "I did, Princess. But I'm home now." He set her down, kneeling to her level. "And I have a surprise. My boss, Ms. Hayes, has invited us to the symphony next weekend. Would you like to go?" Emma's eyes widened. "The lady who never smiles? She wants to meet me?" Marcus laughed. "She does. And between you and me, she does smile sometimes. When no one's looking." That night, as he tucked Emma into bed, she asked the question he'd been waiting for. "Did something happen in the snow, Daddy? You look different." Marcus thought about the night in the cabin, about Victoria's hand finding his in the darkness, about the walls that had come down between them. "Sometimes, people surprise you. Sometimes they're not who you thought they were at all." Emma nodded sagely. "Like in my books. The Ice Queen always melts in the end." In the months that followed, Hayes Innovations transformed. Victoria implemented family-friendly policies that became the talk of the industry. Employee satisfaction soared alongside profits, proving that compassion and success weren't mutually exclusive. For Marcus and Emma, the changes were even more profound. Victoria became a fixture in their lives, Sunday brunches, movie nights, and holidays filled with new laughter. Emma adored her, and Marcus found himself falling for the woman behind the CEO mask. 1 year after the snowstorm, Marcus and Victoria stood in the same cabin, this time by choice. "I was so cold before you and Emma," Victoria admitted, her eyes reflecting the firelight. "I didn't realize how much I'd closed myself off." At dinner that evening, Victoria pulled out a small velvet box. "I love you both. I'm not asking to replace Melissa, but I'm asking if you'll let me be part of your family, officially." "Emma already knows," she added quickly. "I asked for her permission last week. She said yes, and then made me promise we could get a puppy." 6 months later, at their wedding, Victoria knelt before Emma. "Today I'm not just marrying your dad. I'm promising to be your family too." As they exchanged vows beneath the spring sky, Marcus reflected on how completely his life had transformed. Victoria had entered his life as an obstacle and now stood before him as his partner, his love, and a mother to his daughter. Sometimes the universe knows exactly what it's doing when it traps two people in a snowstorm with only one bed between them. If this story touched your heart, please like and subscribe for more emotional journeys that remind us how unexpected connections can transform our lives.